The James Show Podcast.
The new initiative from the Democrats, you're going to love it. Have you heard of SAM? They're calling it SAM. It's a new $20 million initiative that they're launching to try and win back males. Males? What's going on? What's the big change? Well, they say they're concerned because Trump swept the battleground states and the popular vote, something he didn't do in 2016. And so they're going to be investing in digital ads across social media and in video games. And they're going to do research into what types of syntax, language, and content go viral in male-dominated spaces. And I just can't laugh hard enough at this. If you want to learn what kind of syntax, language, and content could help win over male voters back to Team Blue, here's an idea, and this is going to go way out on a limb. How about you say one nice thing about us? How about, because a lot of this you could even make it a little hotter if you said straight white males. You realize me being a straight white male in modern America, the Democrats have nothing nice to say about me. No matter what the situation is, they will never defend me. Whether it's an Austin Metcalf situation or a Kyle Rittenhouse situation or George Zimmerman or Daniel Penny. How about you defend one of us at some point? No? Never? Well, gee, I wonder why you're not winning us over. We get demonized at every turn. And every DEI program is actually just a discrimination program against us. It seeks to diminish men's opportunities at every success, at every turn. Whether it's getting into college, whether it's getting hired, whether it's getting promoted, every celebration of DEI is a celebration of diminishing of males, or straight white males, at least. In fact, I like using those all together. Because, look, here, if you're worried about the syntax and the word usage and the sort of language and content, how about you stop using one-way terms? Example, toxic masculinity. Now, there are some masculine traits that can be toxic, absolutely. But what's the converse of that? Is there a toxic femininity? Have you ever heard that once in your life from Team Blue? Is there a positive form of masculinity? Like we have toxic masculinity. Do we have anything do we have a positive masculinity or a constructive masculinity or a supportive or anything nice? Do you have anything nice to say about masculinity? No, you don't. So progressives have attributed Kamala Harris's loss to institutional misogyny and aggressive attitudes among men. Okay. How about you stop blaming us? How about for 1 second you go, well, maybe she was a candidate that no one voted for, that didn't win any primaries, that only had a 105-day campaign, that wouldn't do any interviews, that wouldn't answer any questions, that had all kinds of edited tape from 60 Minutes and all these other issues. How about you just lay down those things before you start blaming men? How about you did something wrong at some point? Maybe you didn't pick the best candidate out of a nation of 340 million people. No, it's just men, because men suck. And then you're going to turn around and say, well, why don't men like us? Because you hate us. And I think a lot of it is the DEI thing, because when women dominate an industry, it's celebrated. When men do, it's some sort of problem to be solved. Like when they have the unmanned flight crews. Have you seen that? Where they take the selfies. Look, the whole crew on your flight today is women. There's a woman pilot, a woman co-pilot. There's all women in the flight crew. Isn't this great? But if it was all men, they'd be like, look at this. Where's the diversity? This is a problem that needs to be solved. And you see it not just on TV, you see it at your workplace. If you work for a big corporation, you probably have to take these tests where everyone gets re-educated. They go through the re-education camp. I got it. Men suck. I don't even have to read the materials or watch the videos. I just know what to answer. Let me guess. I suck. That's the answer to all of these questions on all this re-education that your corporation's making. How about we back off of that? How about you get your boot off their throat if you want men to come back to supporting the Democrat Party? Because they've lost Hispanic men too. And black men were leaving in droves. They keep this up, they're not going to have one demographic of men left. So what advice would you give to the Democrats in regaining support of straight white men? My advice is, how about stop hating on us? But it can't be that simple, can it? Mike in Plano, you're on WBAP. Your thoughts on Sam?
Good afternoon, James. I think they need to hold the course. They need to continue their messaging, putting out cringy videos of women, Democrat women, jumping up and down to music and singing at these rallies because they continue to bring in their pink-haired, facial pierced, radical liberal, cisgender people. Why would we want to tell them how to change? I love seeing them hemorrhage men and women, and like Democrat women who have sensible minds are leaving their party because they see nutcases are running amok in their all their crazy policies. So that's all I got to say. Keep the course.
Well,
Keep
Mike,
the course.
that's all good and sarcasm, but what good advice would you actually give them that could help?
Take all of their policies, throw them in the trash, and rethink about America and American people and what we want, not the crazy radical change they want to do to our country.
All right, I like your attitude. That's Mike in Plano. Got some hot opinions for you. My next guest, here to clear up what's going on in the real estate market from DFW Real Estate Weekly, Todd Tramonte. You can hear him on the weekends here on WBAP, Saturdays from 3 to 4. Welcome to the James Show. Oh, I got to hit the button.
Got a rowdy one today.
Yeah, we do. All right. Now, Todd, I saw a headline that said the DFW housing market has cooled because we didn't sell as many houses as we did the previous month. But the previous month, we had the record across all major metropolitan areas for selling the most houses. So really falling off of that, it couldn't have been that bad. How bad is it, Todd?
No, I appreciate your mockery of a terrible headline. It feels like what we do most of the time on our show. But no, you're exactly right. March was basically a recent high. We were the most home sales in all of America in March. And then you follow that up with a dip from there, what's noticeable, by the way. It's not a worthless headline. It's just not very indicative of what's going on. All that said, home values are stable. They're not as exciting and running away like they were post-COVID. And transactions are what I would call decent. How about that for a label?
Well, I think these negative headlines and negative stories have a terrible effect because I talk with Bob Lavelle on this show on a regular basis about how many people, when they go to try and buy a home, are surprised that they actually qualify. Well, who put all this negative info in your head that it's so hard to get into a house these days?
Oh, my gosh. We spent a long time on the show a couple of weeks ago absolutely railing against major media outlets that they thrive on the negativity and the fear-mongering, but they really drive the market. And recently there's been a lot of attacks on real estate agents. And I kind of countered with, look, I think the media drives public perception of home pricing and affordability more than real estate agents do. So all that said, home ownership is approachable in DFW. It's more costly than it once was. There's no doubt about that. The entry level is more challenging, but we are having a very similar response from people that are saying, man, I've dreamed of living in that neighborhood. I've dreamed of having a small acreage property, and I'm surprised how approachable it is. I think what a lot of people are dealing with right now is not can they buy or sell, it's should they buy or sell. There's a lot of fear and anxiety that now wouldn't be the smartest time. And if you look at the history of DFW, there's almost nobody that ends up being really happy that they waited. So people can, I think they should.
We continue with my guest, Todd Tramonte, host of Texas Real Estate, here on the weekends at 3 p.m. on Saturdays on WBAP. And Todd, I saw an interesting real estate story here in Texas. Is there was one spot where housing prices were actually going down, and that was Galveston. So you read into it, and it turns out the theory is there was a whole bunch of people who got the Airbnb fever. Well, we'll just go buy a second property and a tourism hotspot, and we'll have a second stream of income here from Airbnb, and it'll be easy, and we'll make a ton of money. It turns out it's not that easy. You don't make that much money. And so now there's a whole lot of people who are trying to unload their Airbnb experiments. And that kind of makes me ask, how's that going around here? Have we reached our peak Airbnb saturation in DFW, Todd?
It's a great question. I would argue that Galveston's a very different market than Dallas. I happen to do a good bit of work down there, and the post-COVID run-up really gave people a false sense of the marketplace. You know, there was more comfort in that than there were in hotels there for a while. It was new. It was interesting, and a lot of people rationalized buying a second or third property for the sake of that revenue. And for a lot of people, that just was never going to be the case. For others, market's sort of oversaturated and will settle back in, and then it will be a good investment again, or continue to be. Dallas is different. And so one of the big factors to look at in Dallas is areas and cities and counties that are either outlawing short-term rentals or adding significant permitting and fees to it. So my answer to you is I would not say we've reached any sort of saturation. There's a lot of excitement up around Frisco and the Universal Studios and theme park type of deal where there is significant demand for short-term rentals and what the opportunities will be there, near Victory, near major sports centers and things like that. So I don't think we're capped, but it's a tactical type market here where we need to be really careful where you want to do that, if that will continue to be legal, and if there's real significant demand for it outside of really occasional surges. So that's where people have gotten hurt pretty bad in Dallas.
Well, Todd, I personally despise all these restrictions on Airbnb rentals. Like, well, do I own this property or not? As a host of
America or not. Yeah.
Right. But you're the host of a real estate show. How do you feel about the restrictions?
Well, my guess is we line up fairly well on our opinions about government intrusion and things like that. I will say, look, there's some protections that are wise for homeowners, and I understand where if somebody lives in a quiet neighborhood and their neighbors start renting their house out by the night and people do crazy stuff, that could be annoying. But I'm not for a lot of restrictions. I'm not for a lot of cost. I'm not for a lot of fees. I am for a free country. There's some gradient there to have some exceptions, but generally speaking, I think it's a free country. I'm proud to live in Texas and Dallas, and I want to be able to do with my property what I want to do with it as long as it doesn't harm somebody else.
Well, and one thing I've tried to encourage younger people to do is get into home ownership the second you can afford it. And
yep.
I was really surprised the first time I bought a house because I wasn't making that much money and my credit wasn't that great, but I still got into a pretty good house with a pretty decent interest rate. And boy, what a difference that made, because whenever I left that house, I took a big pile of money with me. And all the times I've been renting, I never got to take any money with me.
Yeah, I mean, I generally agree with you, and who's surprised that the real estate broker thinks people ought to buy property, but I try not to be a homer and just say that all the time. I will say the generation that's entering homeownership for the first time right now doesn't have the same situation I did or you probably did. I bought my first home for $141,000, but before that, my wife and I literally lived in a converted storage unit. So there were some sacrifices that had to be made. And I think that's what this generation of home buyers is kind of missing.
Well, Todd, my situation was a lot worse because I wasn't living in a converted storage unit before I bought my house. I was living with my mother-in-law. Oh, my God.
All right. Nobody wins in this game, okay, man?
Huge sacrifices all around.
You're a giver. You're a giver. The point I make, though, is I think this generation, this incoming crop of first-time home buyers, what we're seeing, and we talk to hundreds of home buyers every year, is they're really not interested in compromise. They want the forever home, or they want the dream. They want the impressive property first. And what is still feasible in Dallas is to get an affordable, compromised. I'm proud to live here in my first home. Maybe it's a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom. Maybe it's a little bit further out. Maybe that payment is a little bit higher percentage of your total income. I do not want people to poorly steward their resources and get themselves in trouble. But just like you said, homeownership is not only a financial stair-stepping opportunity, it's also a path to stability in the home and marriage, parenting, family, safety, rest, all those things. There's more than a financial ROI. I do want people to own homes, have roots, have security and longevity. But I do think most first-time home buyers ought to be willing to make some compromises to get into homeownership. I think a lot of people have been waiting, especially the last 2.5 years, and the cost of waiting has been really significant. And for some people, homeownership might outpace them. The rate of growth may be so quick in some areas that many people will never catch up. So I've told clients before, if you want your children to own real estate in DFW in another generation, you might want to find a way for you or them to start participating in real estate now.
All right. You can find Todd Tramonte on the weekends, 3:00 here on WBAP with Texas Real Estate. ToddTramonte.com, still your best website?
That's right. ToddTramonteTeam.com, or just Google me. You'll find me. We're pretty easy. You can call, text, send a message, fill out a form. We'll take good care of you.
All right. There he is. Thank you very much for your insight on real estate, Todd Tramonte. And there's a law that's passed both chambers of the Texas legislature. maybe signed into law any second now by the governor. And it would put the 10 Commandments in every classroom, in every public school in Texas. Now, if this was happening in a vacuum, normally I would be against that. It's like, look, we shouldn't be micromanaging the curriculum and whatever's going on in schools and trying to indoctrinate kids. But that horse has already left the barn years ago. We are now in an arena where public schools are definitely being used for indoctrination, some of it politically or culturally or socially. And if that's what we're going to do, if that's what we're going to have, and we're not going to have school choice, and we're going to have this socialized school system, then I think we got to start playing ball, and I support it. And if you're like, wait, you can't have indoctrination in classrooms. Oh, well, the other side gets to have indoctrinations in classrooms. Maybe this will change their mind about using the public school system as an indoctrination camp. Or maybe it'll kind of illustrate for the hard-headed people out there why, at the very minimum, we at least need school choice, if not outright the abolition of socialized schooling. And then the reviews on that were kind of mixed. I'll share some of it with you because I know you didn't hear yesterday's show, and I got a lot of emails afterwards. Like Linda has one example of, I got this probably 10 times. She says, if the left can have their religious icons in schools, Christians can too. Yes, that's the basics of it. Right. And if they want to make the argument that we shouldn't have, the ability for the government to indoctrinate their belief system into our kids, yes, keep going. Say that again slowly, and then let's revisit the curriculum. Let's revisit the flags and the posters and the pride parades and everything else that a lot of other people consider indoctrination. Let's talk about all the obscene books where you teach sexual subjects to minor children. Yeah, let's have this discussion, please. Steven says, also the First Amendment protects you from state-run religion. It doesn't mean banning the 10 Commandments while flying every flag, but the one on Sinai. I thought that was a beautiful turn of a phrase. He said, separation of church and state was never meant to ban God from the classroom. It was meant to keep the government out of the pulpit, not to turn every school into a sanctuary for moral relativism and ideological experiments. If you can tolerate Satan clubs after school, you can handle a little thou shalt not kill in homeroom. There's a difference between freedom of religion and freedom from anything that offends an atheist blogger. Well, let me put a little nuance on Steven's email here, where the difference here between freedom of religion and state atheism is what they're trying to push in public schools. Not secularism. Not state secularism means they're indifferent on whether or not the book being studied has a religious intent. State atheism is what the Marxists believe, and that's not like an abstract theory. This is what Cuba did, This is what the Soviet Union did. This is what most of the people behind the Iron Curtain did. This is what China did and kind of still does. So, yeah, state atheism is where you try and extinguish all mentions of religion from the public sphere. And that's not what we want here. That's not what the founding fathers intended here. It's great advice. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Yeah, this is good advice, whether or not you're a Christian, Muslim, a Hindu, or some godless, soulless atheist. Yeah, it's seems like a pretty cut and dry situation for most of us, doesn't it? Melissa says, if you're going to shove queer theory down our throats, then we can have religion in schools. Melissa, word choice. Let's talk about word choice. We're not going to be shoving anything down kids' throats when we're talking about that. Deanna said, this is white Christian nationalism at its finest, and it's BS. Why does it have to be white? What is white about the 10 Commandments? What is it? The 10 Commandments seem to be pretty race neutral. It's not like they came from Sweden. They came from a part of the country where white people are not, or part of the planet where white people are not. White Christian nationalism. Really? What color are Christians? They're not a color. They're not specifically a color. And the 10 Commandments isn't just solely held up in the belief system of white Christians. It's all Christians. Brown Christians, black Christians, everything in between. We all believe in the 10 Commandments regardless of race. And I don't understand how this is a nationalist move either. It is Christian. You got that part right, Deanna. But white Christian nationalism, there's nothing jingoistic about the 10 Commandments. Yeah, this is funny too. Yankee in Exile says, Wait, this was a Twitter message. Wait until they find out the 10 Commandments are from the book of Exodus, which is from the first 5 books of the Old Testament, which is the Torah, which is Jewish law, not Christian law. Yeah, that's right. Christians don't believe in the Old Testament. Good point, Yankee in Exile. You really got us on that one. And I love it. If you have any comments, I don't get to read every email on the air. I don't get to respond to every email, but I do read every single email that you send to james@wbap.com. On a busy day, I'm not so famous and popular that I don't have the ability to read all of them. Oh, I read them all. I just don't get a chance to respond to them all. But just rest assured, if you send it, I'll at least read it, even if you don't hear it on the air or get an email in return. All right, tonight, right as soon as I get out of here, I'm going to put up the podcast for the James Show, and then I'm going to head out to Keller for the next James Show listener meet and greet. If you want to come out, hang out with some like-minded folks who love really good radio shows, go to Manny G's in Keller. If it's on your way home, you have no excuse. Why? It's absolutely free. Come out there, meet me, judge me based on my appearance, maybe make some new friends. We'll have a couple of adult beverages. And we'll have as much fun with the Tuesday night as we possibly can, because I know we all got to work tomorrow. All right, so come on out. Meet me at Manny G's Keller tonight from around 7 p.m. to around 9 p.m. And then as soon as that's over, I'm going to be looking for the next location for the next James Show meet and greet next month. So if you know a person who either runs or owns a bar, restaurant, someplace, some venue that could house it, and they want to house the next James Show listener meetup, just let me know. Send me an email, Facebook message, however you want to get a hold of me, Twitter message, Instagram message. Just let me know. I want to restrict this to people who listen to the James Show or WBAP in general. Let's support the people who support us. So maybe I'll get to meet you tonight. If not, I'll be back tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Stick around. Mark Levin's coming up next. I'm James Parker. This has been The James Show. News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM, WBAP.